Hi, guys. My name is Marissa Lenti. I am a voice actress, director, and writer. Some of my big credits are Libra in Fairy Tale, Mistress Sadie in One Piece, Mose in Borderlands 3, Yuna in Kuma Kuma Bear, and I've directed anime like Tribe 9, Adachi and Shimamura, Arte, and Kimono Friends.
So I can just jump around then with your career so far.
Yeah. However you'd like to start.
Well, I didn't really see you talk in detail about what the acting work that you did as a child, like what kind of roles they were and stuff
Oh,
like
sure. Yeah, when I was little, when I was like 12-ish, I did on camera and theater acting.
that.
So I was in a couple different theater shows like Annie and The Little Mermaid and a couple different things like that. And then I did mostly commercial work. I did a couple commercials that were mostly shown locally in New York for like game shows and a couple other things. So that was like my child acting career.
And how many years did you work as a seamstress?
Ooh, as a seamstress, about 10. From the age of 15 to about 25, I was doing my online cosplay business.
And was there something specific that happened that made you want to move away from that?
Well, I went to college for costume design.
Yeah.
And as much as I enjoyed my college and going to college, they prepared us, for the real world. They were like, this is what it's actually going to be like to be a costume designer. And if you're going to be a costume designer career, a career costume designer, you're probably going to end up working in the theater. And they gave us that experience. They put us in a theater environment. They had us make costumes. And it was very high intensity, very high stress. I was not about it, and that's kind of when I decided, like, hey, I need to find a different career path, and that's when I found voice acting.
Mhm. And so when you moved to Texas, how long were you working at GameStop first before you stopped?
1 year.
Okay.
I worked at GameStop for a full year. Right when I quit was when a game that I was in was coming out, so I was like, I'm gonna buy the game, and then that's gonna kind of be it for me in GameStop. I really enjoyed working there for the year, but yeah, after about that year, I started working at Funimation pretty regularly, and I decided to go full-time voice actor.
And I have found that everybody kind of has different answers as to how they took to dubbing. Was it hard for you at first?
Well, at first, yeah, definitely. I did a couple shows where I was just like background additional voices, and I found the syncing the mouth up to be very difficult to get my head around. But I got lucky because my first major character was Libra from Fairy Tale,
Yeah.
and she wears a veil over her face. So I didn't have to worry about matching the mouth movements for the whole first like couple episodes that I played her. And it wasn't until we switched into the Eclipse Spirit arc where her eyes get covered but her mouth gets uncovered that I was like, okay, now I gotta really learn how to do flat matching.
Mhm.
But by that point I was starting to get used to it. I was starting to get into it, and so I got lucky. I got kind of eased in.
Mhm. And I know early on too that you had to do some voice matching for the My Little Pony game.
Yes, I got hired to voice match a couple of the characters, but mostly Princess Celestia was like the main one that they called me in for. And it was not just voice matching, it was specifically recreating lines and performances from the show. They would send me voice clips of her from the show and be like, give us this exact read. Like, it cannot deviate at all from how she says it in the original. So I would listen to it in my headphones and then repeat it back into the microphone over and over again until we had like four options to pick from. And that's because the storybook apps were recreations of the movies and episodes.
Yeah.
So they wanted it to be as exact as possible, which was hard, but it was really cool because, as an American, your chances to work on My Little Pony are pretty low
Right.
because My Little Pony's done in Canada. So I was like, this is like my one chance to be like a My Little Pony character. And of course I was going to take it. I did some voice matching for Transformers,
Yeah.
Rescue Bots, and it wasn't difficult because of the individual characters. I found the individual characters to be easy, but I was playing 3 of the female characters. And so I was like, I have to make sure that they sound different, and that was really difficult for me because I was thinking about, mimicking how they said things and the exact lines and the exact way that they said them. But then I was also thinking about how my voice would play against myself in some of these scenes. Cause I think I play one character and her own mother. So I was like, I don't want them to sound like the same. So I would push my voice more different, like higher pitch, lower pitch, so that they would contrast each other. But then it wouldn't sound like the character anymore. And they'd be like, that doesn't sound like her anymore. And I'm like, oh no, so that was definitely difficult.
And just generally, out of like whatever, like anime or whatever so far, what's the case where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly, do you think?
Definitely NonBukka. So that was a show we did in 2016. Love that show. My character has 2 voices, one low, one high. The high pitched voice is her real voice, and the low pitched voice is a fake voice that she puts on. And the low pitched voice was not very different from my natural voice, but the high pitched voice is ridiculously different. I clench my throat muscles a little bit in order to make it go higher. And it's basically the highest pitch voice I can produce. So it doesn't get much more different than Momoko.
Do you think you still have the most affinity with her then, with characters you played?
She's one of my favorites, absolutely. Her and Yuna from Kuma 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 Bear, who was my first lead. And I played her just like last year. And she's very close to my heart now too, because obviously those are both really big, important roles for me. My first main character and my first lead.
Do you think you personally relate to them the most as characters with who you played? Or
I would say to Yuna. Yuna and I have very similar personalities. She's done with everything constantly, and she doesn't want to be bothered. And but she's good at what she does, and she kind of is just like, yeah, like it's not a big deal sort of thing. And I find myself very much relating to that kind of character.
do you think you have a personal preference for doing drama opposed to comedy, or?
I like both. For me, it's just a matter of like what kind of character I'm portraying in the show, regardless of if it's comedy or drama. And also, like, I just really like anime. So anything that is anime or like a JRPG or something like that, it's just really up my alley. So I'm like, that's, my favorite thing to do, which is why if anyone comes up to me and is like, do you want to be this character in this anime? I'm like, any character. Let's just do some anime.
It's sort of related to that. One of my signature questions is always asking, what is the darkest headspace you've had to go?
I can think back to when I was doing Borderlands 3. There is a DLC pack where one of the scenes involves like this little ghost girl talking to whichever character you're playing as. And my character Mose is very like unaffected emotionally. She's clearly a little bit traumatized and doesn't super bring it up. And she talks to this little girl with such like softness and kindness. I'm like, oh, her past, like something in her childhood maybe like really affected her, and now she's being affected by seeing this kid in kind of a similar dire situation. And I remember just kind of like finishing the scene and being like, whew, like that's a lot to think about. It's not on the surface of the scene. It's very much like you have to jump to a couple logical conclusions in order to be like, oh, that's heavy. I don't like go to a dark headspace, but I'm like, I'm in a dark space just because of the scene that's going on around me. And so I was like, oh, that one really got me.
Has there been really many cases with anime so far where it's been a high emotional thing?
Anime. I tend to end up in comedies and there's a lot of like, this is not very, not very heavy. I'm trying to think of like a really good example of like, oh, that's crazy. Yuna has some good scenes, but they're not dark. It's just like emotional. She'll scream and she'll cry. I guess the one that comes to mind is The Ones Within. I play a character who is kind of appears to be a yandere. She's got like a psychotic side, and she's clearly like also emotionally damaged.
Mhm.
And there's a scene where she hallucinates her dead sister, and she's in tears and she's been throwing up because she's very sick. And that scene, definitely, I was like, all right, I need like a minute after this, because it was a lot of like crying and hacking and like being very sad. So there's that, definitely. And I mean, anime presents a lot of that with kind of a lever, and it'll immediately go back to comedy. And in those instances, you're like, okay, I need to like reset my mental whatever, because I'm like, this is a total gear shift. The ones within, especially because it's a death game anime, but it's also a comedy. So you have to really kind of jump in between.
Yeah. Well, and early on too, guess it wasn't necessarily the character was dark, but like the series, Divine Gate.
Divine Gate, my character said one line in that
Yeah.
anime. I remember I came in and I had my one line, and then Cliff, who was directing it, was like, she'll probably be back. She's a robot, lady. Like, it seems like she'll be really important. And then she did not come back. And in the last scene, like the credit scroll, she's standing there with everybody, and he's like, you didn't do anything, where have you been? So my knowledge of what goes on in Divine Gate is like this, because I'm like, I said my line,
Yeah.
and then she left.
Do you not watch a lot of the stuff that you're in then, or?
I do, but not all of it, because there's too much at a certain point. But like, the ones where I have a character who's very involved in the show, I will go and I'll watch the whole thing. Obviously, I have seen all of the shows that I have written and all the shows that I've directed, and that's a lot of shows, just considering those. But I mean, like, literally a couple hours before this, I was rewatching NonBukka with some people. So it just depends on the show. And if I play a character who's pretty heavily involved, I've probably seen it.
Mhm. And then I would think maybe the first instance where you got to do a boy voice for anime was in Joker Game.
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, I might have done some small ones before that, but that was like, oh, I've got like a couple hours of doing a boy voice. That was interesting because I had never done it before. Very heavily lean on the like scratchy boy voice. That is the one that comes the most naturally to me, is just adding a little bit of scratch and then suddenly it's a boy voice. I think it's because I was heavily influenced by Pokemon.
Okay.
That like scratchy Ash Ketchum kind of thing that Veronica Taylor does so well. Definitely kind of stuck in my brain as like, that's a boy voice for anime. And so that's the one that I default to whenever you're like, give me a boy voice. I'm like, here he is, he's scratchy. And then sometimes people will be like, hey, can we dial it back, or can we dial it up the amount of scratch? And that'll kind of, key me into where the specific boy voice is going to land.
Mhm. It is funny too with how many cats you've played.
Yes. Lots of cats, because I love it. I will tell everybody, I'm like, you're hiring me for this show, awesome, I love it. If there's any cats you need done, you let me know. Because it's so fun. I mean, you're just standing in a booth meowing and hissing, and it's brain autopilot kind of thing. You don't have to think about anything. Like, there's emotion to the character, but there's like, this much context for what that emotion is, because the cat is sad, or the cat is happy, or the cat is playful. There goes a cat. And it's autopilot. I'm just like, just play me the animation and I will give you noises, and I just do it and I love it. It's the best.
Is there a particular favorite one that you've played so far?
Definitely the black cat from Actor Songs Connection, because she was both a cat who meowed and a cat who talked. And she was up in that higher range where Momoko was. So it was a rare voice that I don't usually get to do, plus cat noises. Plus, I just love that show to death, and I had written it And as I'm writing that episode, I'm like, I would really love to play the black cat. And of course, Amber, who's the best and one of my best friends, was like, you want to come in and be the black cat? And I was like, absolutely, I do. So very special to me, you know, working with a friend, working on a show that I wrote, meowing, and getting to do like a rare voice type. It was 4 in 1 for me.
And in the case where you have a part in a anime that you're directing to, are you directing yourself?
Usually, yeah. I try not to do it often. I don't usually voice characters in my own shows, but the times that I have been like Kimono Friends and Arte. Kimono Friends because there was a 55-person cast, so it was almost inevitable that I was going to end up in it. And I got approved to play Grey Wolf, so I was like, of course I'm going to take the part. And then Arte because I wanted an all Italian American cast. And I was like, well, I only know so many Italian American actors, so I'm going to be in it too. And in those instances, yeah, I would just get in the booth, me and an engineer, and I'd be like, I'm going to direct myself. I know what I want for this. And it's just easier that way.
And well, with older series too, I thought it was really cool that you got to be involved with a Bt'x and Fatal Fury too.
Yeah, Bt'x. So interesting to direct a show where when that show came out, I was 4 years old, you know? So I was like, whoa, you know, it's a blast from the past. It's a show that I probably wouldn't have even watched if I wasn't working on it. And so I got to like take a little peek into anime history, Kurumada show, which is a big deal. And now I'm directing Gunbuster, which came out before I was born.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's even more wild. This is a show that was out and people were watching before I even existed on this planet. And that's a Hideki Anno show. So like, you know, just as equally like, oh my God. But I love that old style of animation. I love like traditional animation anime. It's really pretty and there's just something special about it that I'm like really count myself as blessed to work on shows that for all intents and purposes I should not have an opportunity to work on because you'd think they'd be, you know, mostly done already. And it is true that most older shows are already dubbed. So when they find one that is undubbed and somebody decides, you know, we're going to give it a dub, it's really fortunate for those of us who are, you know, came into the business after that show existed to get to do it now.
Mm-hmm. And having a character part too in the new City Hunter movie. That was cool.
Yes, very cool. I didn't know anything about City Hunter going in, but I wrote the script for that one as well. And I was like, oh, you know, Amber is, you know, really relying on me to A, give a good script and then B, give a good performance. So I was like, I'm going to do a bunch of research. I'm going to watch all the old dubbed City Hunter movies. I'm going to see how they did it and how I want to like adopt some of those elements or modify some of those elements. So you know, the names got changed back. They're not localized anymore. They are Japanese names again in the new dub, but we kept his catchphrase from the old dub, and I made a couple references to the old dub, and that's the kind of thing where you know, it was just really special to be like, hey, you know, kind of reaching out to a fandom that I don't actually know or that I'm not a part of and being like, hey guys, like I see what you have over here in this fandom. I'd really like to deliver to you something you're going to enjoy. And then when we screened it at Otakon, hearing people in the room actually laugh at the references to the old dub and like get them and laugh at the jokes, I was like, oh, you know, that's awesome. Like it was a very invigorating feeling. And the producer was also sitting next to us and I was like, I really hope he likes it. And he did. So like super, super cool. Really count that as like one of the more like special things I ever got to work on.
Has there been a case where with a series that you've directed that you were like really daunted to work on it?
Daunted. I'm definitely feeling it now with Gunbuster. There's a lot of high expectations for that dub. You know, I see a lot of people talking about like, oh, Noriko's actress better be able to scream or else, you know, it's not going to be as good, or like, oh, you know, I'm really hope that they do X, Y, and Z. And I read those comments and I kind of compartmentalize them into my brain as like, these are the ones that like, I gotta hit it for the fans, you know, it's gotta be good for the fans. And then there's others where I'm like, I don't know if that's possible, what they're asking for. Sometimes they're asking for really wild things. And then I have my own ideas of what I'm like, I think this would be really cool, or I think that would be really cool to do. And we'll see how people feel about, it. But when you're working on it in a vacuum, you can't reach out. Right. Because it's a secret until it's done, all the decisions that you're making and all of the things that you're doing to it. You're like, I just have to kind of believe in myself and believe in my team, the people who write the scripts and the actors, be like, okay, I believe that we're all going to come in and give 110%, and that's the best we can do. And then whether or not people like it, you don't know, but at least you can say like, I came in with passion. I did the best I possibly could. I listened to the fandom as far as I could. And hopefully, you're like, hopefully that means that it'll come out great and that people will like it. But yeah, definitely feeling it on Gunbuster. That is one where I was like, oh boy, it's a big deal. Yeah. And you don't want anyone, especially someone who has been waiting for a dub for like 30 years. That's a lot more expectation than someone who's been waiting for a dub for 2 weeks. It's like, some people have been fans of this for multiple decades. And they've been waiting to hear it in English. And it's like, you better do a good job and you better try your best. And I'm like, well, I can try my best. That is for sure.
So with Aria, were you familiar with it?
No, that one was really cool because I was like, oh, I don't know anything about this show. And when I got there to New York, we did the whole thing. We did all of the like shorts, every season, everything got dubbed. And so they had it all laid out. They were like, here's the entire show for you. And here's all this information for you. And I was like, okay, I am going to learn everything there is to learn about Aria over the course of this process. And that one was also really special because looking at the characters available, I did not expect to book Alicia. Because I usually play the like dark character or like the lower voiced character, like the very serious characters or apathetic. And what I ended up with was like very sweet, angelic, older sister figure. And I was like, this is kind of cool. So being able to slip into that character and be like, okay, she's like this the entire time. And then learning the plot as we went was very relaxing, honestly. We were listening to that very relaxing music. It was just me and the director. There was no one else working in the studio. We would work all day from morning to night and break for meals. And there was like, we were in upstate New York. So I was visiting my parents and then I got to drive to the studio and then we would go out to lunch at this little town that was like right by the studio. And then we would come back from the little seaside town. Seaside, it's the Bay, it's New York. But we would drive back and then we would do Aria for the rest of the night, all day Aria. So it was a very immersive experience. I would leave gifts for the other actresses. I would come in and be like, oh, I bought this like figure set on eBay and I'm keeping the Alicia, but here's all the other characters. And I was like, and I had like little name tags on each of them. And I was like, please give this to everybody else next time they come in. But that was the extent of getting to see the other actors at all.
Yeah. I suppose you probably find it easy to connect to her character then.
Yeah. I mean, once I got into Alicia's character, it was very easy to stay there because she's not mysterious in any way. I mean, a little bit, but for the most part, she kind of tells it like it is. Her personality that she shows to the world is her real personality. So once I was in the vibe, we just kind of kept going. And I was like, it's Alicia and it doesn't change. We're just kind of chill. Yeah. At a certain point, it was second nature. Just like, okay, here's the Alicia voice. Here you go.
Kind of complete opposite side of that. How about with Ryoko into Love Rue?
To Love Rue. Yeah. To Love Rue, I again play two characters because I'm the dog as well. Marin and Mikado. And Mikado, she has that element of mystery where it's like, okay, she's got like a way that she acts around the students, and then she's got a way that she acts when she's kind of alone that's different. So there was, unlike Alicia, a moment where the director had to stop me and be like, okay, well, now her personality is going to be a little bit different. Let me explain that to you. And I'm like, what is it? And he's like, well, there's aliens in the show. Let me explain what that's all about. And I'm like, okay. So a little bit more research required for her in order to embody all of her different sides.
Mhm.
And then I was also the dog. Being the dog was easy. That's another one where it's just like, just play the animation and I can just go for it.
Mhm.
So I had easy and difficult kind of, back and forth.
Mhm. Another really cool role in No Gun's life.
Yeah. Olivier is much more along the track of like the kind of characters that I usually play. This like very serious, no nonsense, cool lady. That show was a lot darker and grittier than a lot of the things I was getting to do at the time, and that was interesting in its own right. But of course, it was also right when the pandemic was kind of starting or like getting really bad, and so I was doing it almost all from home. Well, at least the second season. The first season I did at the studio, but the second season was all from home, and that made it even more like oppressive because I was like in a little closet, me and an iPad and a little microphone, and I was like, here we go, this like dark closet. So I have a lot of memories of that where I'm in a closet, or we were recording at the studio at night right before everything kind of changed.
Mhm.
So that one's got a lot of interesting memories in addition to an interesting character and vibe. So yeah.
This is probably obvious too, but do you always find something to relate to, even if the character's really evil?
Sure. I mean, you gotta latch on to something because even the most evil character should have an element of humanity. I mean, they don't always, but sometimes you got to make it up. You're like, okay, here is the thing that I'm going to latch on to that's like, this is my character's little bit of humanity. And because otherwise the performance can feel kind of flat, and you don't want that. I think a good example was I voiced, not anymore, because I got replaced for the home video version, but I played the collector in Silver Guardian
Oh, right.
until it was revealed that she was a different character in a disguise, and then they replaced me with that character's actor, which is correct thing to do. And then I played a different character later. But when I was the one playing the collector, I was like, okay, she is killing a lot of people, and she appears as like this huge like tentacle monster at one point and kills a lot of people, and I'm like, so why does she do that? This is Flame. But yeah, you have to find that element of like, what is it about this character that people can relate to, or that I can relate to. And that definitely was the case with her. Hi, can I help you? Where do you want to be? You want to go? You want to stay? What do you want? He's thinking about it. This cat is 17 years old. I've had him since he was this big.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's a little old man. You gonna go? Okay, bye.
That does make me, yeah, I was gonna ask, what's the story of the cat behind the voice actors thing for trademark?
Yes. That's Moxie. That's my other cat. She's around here somewhere, I'm sure. She is one of the most talkative cats I've ever met in my life. And so I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we recorded her so that we could use her in anime? And again, Amber is my best friend, and she very much amuses me. So she's like, yeah, okay. Or she was like, we could try it. And I brought her in one day and I put her on my lap in front of the microphone, and we got all kinds of noises out of her. She meowed, she purred, she hissed, she did all sorts of stuff, really without prompting even. I just kind of held her on my lap and she was looking around at stuff and hissing at, like, she'd see something out the window and she'd hiss at it, and then she'd look at me and she'd meow, and then she'd settle down, she'd start purring. I really didn't have to do anything. She just sat there, and I pet her, and we got about a half hour's worth of great audio out of her. And so I was like, oh, now we can use this in our anime. And so she played some unnamed cats in Actors Songs Connection and Banana and the Curious Bunch. And then when Tribe 9 came around, I was like, I want to use Moxie's audio for Nekomaru, because the cat, I know, doesn't do anything supernatural, or she doesn't talk, so there's no reason to have it be a person. I was like, I know that I could have just a cat and it would be okay. And so we used her audio, and I was like, can we credit her for this? And they were like, Nekomaru's a named character, so we got to credit somebody. And so we credited her as just Moxie. And of course, that's very eye-catching. So people were like, who? What? Who is that? Who's just Moxie? And I'm like, it's my cat. It's my cat. It makes for a great story, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't even think that's really ever been done in anime dubs before.
No, I don't think so. I mean, if it has, it's more likely that it would be from the Japanese version, because sometimes you'll watch a show and the original version will definitely be real cat sounds. Sometimes you watch it and you go, oh, that's just a guy, meowing. But sometimes you'll be like, okay, those are real cat sounds, but they're usually stock sounds. It's not often that you know by name which cat was recorded. And so Moxie, wherever she is, gets to have a named character credit on behind the voice actors, which tickles me. I think it's so funny.
And I also think you're the first person I've talked to, or the second person who's been part of the Sentai dub for Kakegurui.
Yes. That was interesting, because I was debating if I should watch the original dub or not before I started. I ultimately decided not to, because I didn't want to ape off of the original performance. I thought it would be kind of disrespectful to mimic her performance in any way. So I was like, I don't want to watch it, because I don't want to steal someone else's performance. That seems very weird. And to be fair, I wouldn't have really had the chance to anyway, because when I went in to play my character, they were like, you're going to have an accent, which I'm pretty sure she does not in the original. So I think by default, my performance was going to end up very different. A, because we're two different people, and obviously we have different acting sensibilities. But B, because I was going to do an accent. So I was like, okay, I'm doing an accent, and I haven't watched the original performance, so let's just go in and make an original performance, and because it was Sentai Filmworks, it was very quick. We got it done really quick, so I didn't get to sit with the character for very long. It was just like kind of go, and it was all off the cuff, off the brain, which can be freeing in its own way, because you're not overthinking it. And I definitely didn't want to overthink it too much. But yeah, it was fast. It took me like one day. We were done.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, well, there goes that experience. It's already all wrapped up. Definitely an interesting chapter.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Is there any kind of cool story with becoming involved with Konasuba?
Konasuba, yeah, actually a little bit. It was right before the pandemic kind of got into full swing. We were hearing news about it, but nobody really knew what was going on yet. It hadn't super hit mainstream media. And I was flying to LA for a movie premiere, because a friend of mine invited me to see the new Digimon movie, which was being premiered around that time. And it got canceled, the movie premiere. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Well, I guess I'm stuck in LA with nothing to do. So I told all the local studios that I was around, and Bang Zoom was like, oh, why don't you come and be in the Konasuba movie? And I was like, great, I'd love that. And I got to play Arue, which was like, I was, shook. I was like, oh, I didn't expect to, get to come in and play a main character on a Konasuba movie. Just because I happened to be in LA at the time, but it really was right place, right time. And the director of that was so fun. We had a really great time. It was one session because it was just while I was in town, we did the whole movie, and it felt kind of surreal to, go in there and be like, hi, I'm visiting from out of town and let's do Konasuba, I guess. But now that I live here, it feels like such a long time ago, because I quarantined for like a year, 2 years or whatever, and now I'm here. So yeah, that was the Konasuba movie. Very, very random happenstance, but very, very glad I got to do it. In Texas, we use ellipsis to notate a pause, whereas here they use like the little up caret. And I've heard people, argue about which one is better, but for me, I'm like, all I'm concerned about is the fact that I got to learn the new method, because otherwise I look at the script and I go, what am I looking at? So now I'm starting to get used to it a little bit, although I've not done as much anime as I have video games since coming here, because the amount of video games that are available is so much more than it was in Texas. I mean, Texas has basically no video games except Borderlands. I haven't super gotten used to it yet, but I'm working on it.
Oh, would being in Pokemon Evolutions, would that be LA based?
That was LA based, but it was also not a dub. We recorded those lines with no visual, and then they animated the characters to the English recordings.
Oh, wow.
So it was like an American cartoon. Well, it was a Japanese cartoon, but it was done in the style that we usually do for American cartoons.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, a Pokemon character animated to my voice. That's crazy. But it wasn't an anime style script. It looked like a movie script or like a prelay animation script.
Oh, yeah, another really fun cat in Sleepy Princess.
Yes. Stamp Cat. I mean, that was an instance where, again, Amber was the director on that, and she was like, I know you're going to come in, you can do a cat voice and you can do a voice that changes, because Stamp Cat has also the two voices. So I was like, yep, that's exactly the kind of character I get to play. And he's got that one scene, that's it, but that's all he needs. It's a great scene. Or
then playing Jonah Scott's wife in Attack on Titan.
Yeah. That was I was very grateful for that, because I played an Attack on Titan character in Attack on Titan Junior High, that being Ilse Lagnar, and but she's dead in the mainline Attack on Titan show. So I was like, oh, I'll never get to be in like real Attack on Titan. So I feel like, they brought me and they had me do Willie's wife, and it was very nice to be like, oh, I got to, sneak in there and be an Attack on Titan proper. Although now they announced that we're gonna dub the OVAs, which is the only time that Ilse is seen alive in mainline Attack on Titan. So I was like, I get to finally play my character. Hopefully, I'm really excited for that. I really want to do that soon. I'm crossing my fingers so hard.
Is there like a bucket list franchise for anime that you want to be a part of?
Digimon. I don't even have to think about it. It's Digimon. It's my favorite franchise of all time. I love Digimon with all of my heart. I know way too much about it. I want to be in it. And if I got a choice, I would want to be a Digimon, of course. Maybe one day.
Were there certain voice actors that inspired you the most too when you were getting started?
Yeah, well, it was more like whole casts and whole shows. The one that really got me interested in like, ooh, I should go for this voice acting thing. We were watching the dub of Case Closed. Oh. And I was just like, oh, this was done in Texas, wasn't it? I should, you know what? I'm going to go to Texas. It was kind of that show that made me decide that I was going to pursue voice acting and do it in Texas, so that I could be a part of Funimation dubs. Because me and my friend were watching it, and she was more of a fan of it than I was. She was kind of showing it to me, but I was like, huh, this is kind of cool. Like, I would like to do this. Where was this done? And that sort of got the thought process going.
Is there anything else that's upcoming that you can safely talk about that you're part of? Or
aside from directing Gunbuster, I think that that's kind of it for things that are not out yet. The only other thing I can talk about is Tribe 9 still comes out weekly. I'm directing it right now. I'm in the middle of it. What episode just came out? 4 just came out last week. So 5 is upcoming. And obviously all the fans are very excited for the main villain, Ojiro, who comes back in episode 6. So that's upcoming. Very exciting there. I think that's kind of everything I'm allowed to talk about. Oh, except Freedom Planet 2, which I recorded a long time ago. They said that they're going to announce their release date next month. So that is going to be coming up soon as well. And I play Maria Note, who is the news reporter. She's like a bat. She's really cute. She looks like me a little bit.
And it is cool with Tribe 9 that, of course, there's a lot of new talent part of the cast.
I mean, I was like, oh, it's by the same creator as Danganronpa. But I was like, I don't want any of the voices to repeat from Danganronpa over to Tribe 9, because otherwise then it would really feel like Danganronpa in like a different package. And I was like, I don't want it to feel like that. I think it would be better if it had all original voices. So I opened up the floor to kind of anybody and everybody that I have on my roster who wasn't in Danganronpa. And I was like, come on, everybody audition. I want to hear as many different voices as possible. And so it ended up being this really cool blend of like people who were getting their first anime character, people from LA, people from Texas, New York, they're all sort of in there. And I mean, that's my favorite thing to do anyway. Whenever I direct any anime, I like for it to be very mixed and diverse so that each show has its own audio profile. And you go like, oh, this doesn't sound like any show I've ever heard before. This show sounds like this. And you usually would only get that in the past when shows were region locked, if it had an actor in it that was very rare to hear. So like, oh, this show sounds very unique because the lead never went on to do anything else. And it's like, that's fine. That is a way to make a show sound unique, but I would much rather everyone continue to work in the industry and not vanish. And so how do you make a unique sounding show? Well, you mix people up. You have them playing against people that they've never gotten to play against. You have a cast lineup that is unique. And that way, even if these actors have appeared in many things, or will go on to appear in many things, which is what I hope for all of my actors who are new right now. I hope that they will stay in this industry and go on to play many more characters, but the show will always sound unique because they're with this blend of people that it may never be exactly this blend again. And so that's like important for me for all of the shows I direct, but particularly for Tribe 9, it's even more concentrated because I had to cut a significant portion of people out because I was like, you were already in Danganronpa. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do all new voices. And so like actors like Philip Sacramento and John Van Doren and Bradley Gareth get to come in and really give people a listen to a completely new voice, completely fresh voice, which I think is awesome.
I know you tweeted about it, but is there, for people who don't know, how did Corpse become involved?
Yeah. I just wanted him. I was I did 2 rounds of auditions for Tribe 9. One round was the main characters and another round was like side characters and villains. And so Ojiro, who is the character that he plays, who is the main villain, he was on the second round. And I was, typing it up and adding all the lines and like descriptions of the characters. And then I was like, oh, who do I want for this guy? Because obviously I was going to hear auditions, but you still kind of start thinking about it as soon as you see a character. You go, oh, who could I get? And I had a few people in mind where I was like, that could be good. That could be good. And then my brain just goes, what if it was Corpse Husband? And I'm like, whoa, that's a really good idea, brain, but I don't know if that's possible. But he has acting experience insofar as he does a lot of narration content, or he did a lot of narration content as kind of the genesis of his content. And I was like, so he's a voice actor. especially, you know, again, it's a whole cast of people who are doing anime for the first time. So I was like, yeah, he could come and do anime for the first time as well if he's interested. And so I just included his email when I sent the email off to everybody, and was like, well, if he answers, you know. And he did. And he answered by just sending an audition back, same as everybody else. And I listened to it along with my big list of everybody else. And I was like, yeah, that would be a really good voice for Ojiro. Let's do it. And so I picked him, I got him approved, and I was like, great, we're moving forward. And he's been really great to work with, because he's very dedicated to like making sure it's perfect for the fans. So we spend a lot of extra time on the Ojiro scenes, just kind of massaging it and making sure that he's happy with it and I'm happy with it. And then it goes out and I'm like, here you go. So yeah, it's been a really great experience having him on the show, and it's really cool to see him and all the other actors who are getting their anime debuts kind of celebrating together. It's really heartwarming, and so I'm just having a blast.
I know, of course, your career is still blossoming, but my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy. I mean, definitely the shows that I cast. Like my directing, I think, is what I'm most proud of. As much as I love voice acting, I'm really proud of my directing. I'm really proud of, like you mentioned, bringing new actors in and like creating diverse casts. But like the meme answer that I like to give is the Island of Giant Insects dub. I hope that that's my legacy, because that dub is absolutely bonkers. It's completely off the wall. It is 100% my humor style. Like, I love it. I think it's hysterical. The fact that it exists at all is something that I will happily and proudly take credit for, because I reached out and I was like, would you guys like a dub? And they're like, we'd love a dub. How do we make it happen? And I was like, I have a great idea for how to make this dub marketable to Americans. Let's make it funny, like a B horror movie. And they were like, sure, you know, we love it. Let's go for it. And so I kept putting in more and more egregious jokes, hoping that, or not hoping, but expecting that eventually they would stop me, and they never did. And I was like, I love you guys. Thank you for letting me play. And so now that dub, I think it's hysterical. And it's kind of hard to get your hands on a copy, but if you can, if you have a friend that has a copy and you're able to go over and watch theirs, or if you can go to a con and get it screened like in an 18+ panel, because it is raunchy. It's that's my legacy. That's, I hope people be like, yeah, Marissa Lenti, the one that made the Island of Giant Insects dub happen.
Well, is there something that you want people to take away from your performances so far?
Is there something that I want people to take away? Well, for me, like my main body of work is my directing work, and I hope that people take away the benefit and the value to casting outside the box. You know, bringing in all these new actors, and especially a diverse pool of actors. I very much like am always trying to make sure that I am not sticking to your normal group of people, and that I'm looking for people from other countries, POC actors, LGBT actors, who can bring their own authenticity, their own perspective on things. I think that it makes for stronger shows and stronger performances. And I hope that people who are watching my work are getting that sense, and that it sticks with them, because when people come into this industry, it's usually from being fans first. And anyone who ingests that content, likes it, and wants to mimic it, can create a better environment for everybody, because every new actor coming in is only going to benefit from an industry that welcomes them with open arms. So if people who want to do what I do, like direct, or even just be a part of this industry, are interested in the same things that I'm interested in insofar as promoting diversity, and promoting diversity with a goal towards authenticity and quality for the end show product, I think that that'll just mean that dubs will get better and better as people with that same kind of goal and the background of fandom are coming in, because they're going to go, I want this anime dub to be stellar. I want it to be the best because I'm a fan and I want my work to be something that I would like. I think that the quality will just keep nudging up, 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 up. Not to say that it was ever, super down, but everyone is building on top of their, the last person's great success. And the dubs that inspired me, like Bakano and Ouran High School Host Club and Princess Tutu, I was like, I want to do that because it's so good. And then I can kind of genesis that into my own style. And then I hope that people who come in can genesis my style, if they like my style, into their own thing. And it'll just keep getting, cooler and more interesting and better. Especially as what is kind of a nascent industry like blooms and has a long history behind it, and the history gets longer and longer. It's just really cool to think about what the next generation will make. And so I kind of got away from your question, but if I do leave behind any sort of legacy, I hope it is a springboard for somebody else who's gonna take the ideas that I have and go even further with it. I think that would be really cool to see.
That is nice to hear you bring up Princess Tutu as well, because I don't think very many people talk about that show. Yeah,
such a good show, such a good dub, like A+ stuff all around.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, thank you. I hope that this was good. I hope you'll hope it makes good content.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Bye.
Bye.